To fight a disease after it has occurred is like trying to dig a well when one is thirsty, or forge a weapon once a war began. Now, picture yourself in ancient China, around like 5,000 years ago. A ruler sits deep in contemplation. But this is no ordinary emperor. He's not focused on conquest or wealth, but instead is immersed in conversation with his wisest advisors about the flow of energy in the human body, the movements of warriors, and the very essence of health itself. Yeah, this is the Yellow Emperor, Wang Di. And his quest for understanding would shape not just China, but at the end the entire world's approach to health, movement and wisdom. I'm Matthias, and you're listening to Ancient Wisdom, Modern Life. So welcome to our first episode, and I thought to start with like one of the earliest representatives of Eastern thought and Eastern impacts we still have today, which is the Yellow Emperor and his writing on medicine. And a lot of people today are still using these ideas either as practitioners or as people who are looking for health. So who was the Yellow Emperor, or Huang Di? Well, obviously there's not so much known, but it seems like that he was a mythical Chinese sovereign, but also like a cultural hero. He was among the legendary 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, and is believed to have reigned between either like 2698 or 2697 BC, spanning exactly 100 years. And we know little about him, but what we know is like what he brought to us, which is theory about Qi, out of 5 elements, and a lot of like Taoist thoughts. Starting in the 1920s, there were researchers and historians, specifically Sima Qian, who kind of tried to figure out if the Yellow Emperor actually a historic figure, and they came to a conclusion that like he might have been more like a mythical figure that was created within the reign of this dynasty, which was the Chu dynasty. And originated normally as a god, and who later was represented as a historical figure. So it kind of moved into that, right? And the origin of the mythology is really unclear, but the historians who researched that have formulated several hypotheses about it. I don't want to go into this. I just want you to know this, and we might see this more than once when we talk about Eastern philosophy or Eastern thought, Eastern approaches to things, and ancient wisdom in general, where what's real and what not might have been mixed, and sometimes this also helped to transmit the ideas a little bit better, no? But yeah, so let's start and look into the different approaches. So today's episode takes us to the very foundations of kind of Eastern wisdom. The Yellow Emperor's legacy touches really every aspect of what we'll explore, specifically this season, but in general in the podcast. From martial arts to medicine, from governance to personal development. But here's what makes this story really fascinating for us today, which is the questions the Yellow Emperor asked are the same ones we are still asking. When we say the questions the Yellow Emperor asked are the same ones we are still asking, we must understand that these weren't just medical inquiries. They were profound questions about the nature of human life, health, and our place in the universe. The Yellow Emperor sat with his advisor Chibo and asked questions that feel remarkably modern. He wanted to understand why some people live long, vibrant lives, while others succumbed to illness early. In an age of genetic research and longevity studies, aren't we still seeking the same answers? Our methods have changed, right? We have electron microscopes, we have DNA sequencing, but these fundamental questions remain the same. Consider this passage from the Neijing. Now, quote, "In ancient times, people lived simply. They followed the rhythm of nature, rising with the sun and resting as darkness fell. They moved their bodies, but never to exhaustion. They ate when hungry and drank when thirsty, but never to excess." Quote ends. Today, our wellness experts and health researchers tell us essentially the same thing, right? Align with natural cycles, exercise moderately, practice mindful eating. We've simply replaced following the rhythm of nature with terms like circadian rhythm optimization or even like intermittent fasting, right? So the emperor questions the connection between environment and health. He wanted to understand how wind, heat, moisture, and seasonal changes affected the human body. Today, we have entire fields dedicated to environmental health, studying air quality, climate change, impacts, and seasonal disease patterns. We use different language and more precise measurements, but we are investigating the same relationships. The emperor asked Chibo about the mysterious connection between mind and body. Why do emotions affect physical health? Why does worry impact digestion? Why does fear make us cold? Our modern fields of psychoneuroimmunology and behavioral medicine are still making these same connections, just with different tools. We talk about stress hormones and inflammation markers, but we are observing the same patterns the Yellow Emperor noted thousands of years ago. Just imagine that. Perhaps most remarkably, the emperor was fascinated by individual differences. Why do some people thrive in conditions where others falter? Why do treatments work differently for different people? Today's pursuit of personalized medicine and genetic profiling seeks to kind of answer these same questions. Again, we've just replaced conversations about individuality with discussions of genetic polymorphisms, but the fundamental inquiry remains: how do we honor and treat individual differences in health? The emperor's questions about prevention were particularly forward-thinking. He asked Chibo, and quote, "Why wait until someone is sick to treat them? Isn't it better to prevent illness?" right? Similar to the quote I did at the beginning. So this philosophy, revolutionary for its time, is only now being fully embraced by modern healthcare systems as we shift from reactive to preventive medicine. So what makes these parallels so fascinating is not just the similarity of questions, but the approach to finding answers. The Yellow Emperor sought to understand health as an interconnected system. The body in harmony with nature, the mind in dialogue with physical symptoms, the individual in balance with their environment. So today's emerging fields of systems biology and network medicine are rediscovering the wisdom of this holistic perspective. When the emperor asked about the flow of qi through the body's meridians, he was essentially asking about how energy and information move through human systems. A question that modern researchers explore through studies of bioelectrical fields, cellular communication, and nervous system function. In the Neijing, the emperor asks, what causes the body to fall out of harmony with the Tao? End quote. Today we might ask, what disrupts homeostasis? Right? But different terminology, same fundamental question about the nature of health and balance. These parallels remind us that while our technology and terminology have evolved dramatically, the essential questions about human health and well-being remain very remarkably consistent. So the Yellow Emperor's questions still resonate because they touch on fundamental aspects of the human experience. Our relationship with nature, our search for balance, our desire to understand the complex interplay between mind, body, and environment. So this understanding sets the stage for our explorations of the specific medical theories and practices that emerge from these profound questions. Good. So let's dive a little bit into the medicine of the Yellow Emperor, a system that is really still alive today. So when the Yellow Emperor sat down with his advisor Qi Bo, their conversations laid the foundation for a medical system that would influence healing practices for millennia. The resulting text, the Neijing Su Wen, or the inner classic of the Yellow Emperor, isn't just a medical manual. It's a comprehensive view of human life and health. So let's start with the most fundamental insight, the concept of wholeness. In the Emperor's view, you couldn't separate the human body from nature, couldn't divide physical symptoms from emotional states, and couldn't isolate one part of the body from another. Every aspect of health is interconnected. Let's go into the first one, which is the 5 elements theory, or Wuxing. At the heart of their understanding was the theory of the 5 elements, right, or Wuxing. This wasn't just a philosophical concept. It was a practical framework for understanding how everything in the body and nature interacts. So let's go through the different elements, right? We have wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. They relate to each other. We have the cycle of life and nurture, and a cycle of control. Okay. Wood in that cycle represents growth and flexibility. It is associated with the liver and tendons. Like a tree bending in the wind, it governs our ability to adapt and flow with life's changes. When wood is balanced, we are flexible both physically and emotionally. When it's imbalanced, we might experience tension, anger, or physical stiffness. The next one is fire. And in this sense, wood nurtures or feeds fire. Fire embodies transformation and awareness, linked to the heart and blood vessels. Think of how fire can both be warm and illuminate. So in our body, or in our bodies, it governs both circulation and consciousness. Balanced fire gives us joy and charisma, but imbalanced fire might show up as anxiety or sleep disorders. Now, fire, if it goes to ashes, feeds earth. So earth symbolizes stability and nourishment, connected to the stomach and the spleen. And when I say these organs, they are symbolic organs. Like fertile soil, it's about how we take in and process nourishment, both physically and emotional. When earth is balanced, we feel grounded and supported, and when it's not, we might have experience digesting. When it's not, we might experience digestive issues or worry excessively. Now, earth creates metal. Metal is within the earth. Metal represents refinement and boundaries. It is associated with the lungs and the skin. Like precious metal being refined, it's about taking in what's valuable and releasing what's not. Balanced metal gives us clear boundaries and strong immunity. Imbalance might manifest as respiratory issues or grief that won't resolve. Metal then actually metal controls, no, earth controls water. Okay, so the next one is water, and water embodies flow and wisdom, and it is linked to the kidneys and bones. Like water finding its way around obstacles, it represents our ability to flow through life while maintaining our essential nature. So, balanced water gives us endurance and wisdom. Imbalance might show up as fear or back pain. I hope that was a good introduction to that. I'm actually thinking in a few episodes I'm going to go a little bit deeper into acupuncture theory and traditional Chinese medicine to get a better understanding of that. For me, honestly, it's something I really need to repeatedly read and make sense of, and trying to make sense of it throughout my environment to really use it. But once you understand it, it's a really amazing tool to understand what's going on around you, what's going on with you or with people you care about. Good. Let's now go to the next one, which is the vital force, or the qi. Okay. So running through the entire system is basically the concept of qi. This is the vital force that animates all life. But let's be a bit clear here about what qi really means. It's not some mystical force. It's something you experience every day. It's the difference between a fresh apple and one that's been sitting out for weeks. It's the vitality you feel after a good night's sleep versus like the sluggishness and the tiredness after poor rest, right? So it's the energy you can feel that you have inside. Some days you wake up, or some days you don't feel motivated, and some days you think you can conquer the world. That's basically how it manifests in us in a daily life on a very obvious level. The Yellow Emperor described how qi flows through the body in specific pathways, which are called meridians. Think of this like rivers of energy, right? And when they flow freely, we experience health. When they are blocked, we experience illness. So it basically, and that's how Chinese medicine works, is you're empowering certain energy channels that might be connected to the liver channel or to the kidney channel, right? And at the same time, you're taking some off. And this is how you kind of create balance in your body again. Modern research into bioelectrical fields and cellular communication is also beginning to map these same patterns, just with like different technology, right? So there's kind of a hint we get that these things are actually real. Again, I'm just doing introductions here. We can't go into too much details, or I don't want to, because it's going to be a longer episode than I've planned for. Because Qi in general can be a whole episode. It might be one. Now, let's go to the next one. The rhythm of life. So another crucial insight that the Yellow Emperor had is the importance of natural cycles, right? He observed that different organs and functions have peak times during the day. For example, the liver is most active between 1 and 3 a.m., which is why traditional Chinese medicine recommends sleeping during these hours for optimal detoxification. The stomach is strongest between 7 and 9 a.m., which makes it the ideal time for breakfast, okay? And sometimes also to just go to the washroom. Okay, these aren't just ancient observations, right? Like modern chronobiology kind of confirms these circadian rhythms, and it shows us how our hormones, immune function, and metabolism follow daily and seasonal patterns, right? Now, perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of the Yellow Emperor's medicine was his emphasis on prevention. And here again, this famous quote, I think it's like the third time I repeat it, but I go a bit bigger. So, quote, "The superior physician helps before the early stages of illness. The mediocre physician can only help when illness is already manifesting. The inferior physician can only help when the illness has fully developed." End quote. Listen to that, and compare this to how our healthcare system works to this day. It's opposite. They say back in the days, in China specifically, you would pay your doctor when you're not sick. And the moment you get sick, you would stop paying him or her, which basically incentivized the prevention. So his job or her job was to keep you healthy. Now we pay so much money when we are unhealthy, even though it should be the other way around, right? So this concept is not just about avoiding disease. It was really about understanding the subtle signs that precede illness. In the text, it describes how changes in complexion, smell, emotion, and energy can signal imbalances long before physical symptoms appear. Now, what are practical applications here? Because the Yellow Emperor's medicine wasn't just theoretical, it was intensely and intentively practical. They developed specific practices for maintaining health. One was seasonal living, right? Adjusting your diet, activity and sleep patterns to match the seasons. Then another is emotional balance, right? Understanding how different emotions affect specific organs and systems. They had physical practices, which were developing exercises that promote the flow of qi, like qigong, qigong, or tai chi. And they had dietary tips, let's call it dietary wisdom, which was eating according to the individual constitution and seasonal changes. And then they also had the idea of something like an environmental awareness, right? Where you have like understanding how the weather and the environmental factors influence your health. Nowadays, for example, I live in Vancouver, where you have like really dark, rainy winters. And the big thing a lot of people experience here is seasonal depression. So to say that your environment doesn't influence you is really not true. And you can show this with like really very simple things like that. Okay, so now let's go into the next part. The medical system the Yellow Emperor created obviously didn't remain static, right? So it evolved and it spread, and it really influenced health healing traditions throughout Asia and eventually now the world. But what makes the system particularly relevant today is how it addresses our modern healthcare challenges. And that specifically is like how to understand disease and treatment, right? The Neijing presents a sophisticated understanding of this disease progression that parallels modern pathology. It describes how illness moves through the 6 stages from superficial to deep, from yang exterior to yin interior. And now quote, disease enters through the skin and hair, progresses to the meridians and vessels, moves into the muscles, then to the organs, and finally to the bones and marrow. End quote. This understanding led to a treatment principle still valuable today. Treat the shallow aspects of disease before they penetrate deeper. We see the same principle in modern preventive medicine and early intervention strategies. So, what is the diagnostic method, or what were the methods used? The Yellow Emperor system developed 4 primary. The Yellow Emperor system developed 4 primary diagnostic methods. First, looking, observing color, form, movement, and spirit. Then listening and smelling, noting sounds and odors. Third, asking, detailed patient history and symptoms. And that's something, I don't know, when you were the last time with your GP, I don't get asked many questions. And last, touching, including the sophisticated system of pulse diagnosis. So each method reveals different aspects of health and disease. Modern medical diagnostics, with its blood tests and imaging technologies, and kind of, at the end of the day, seeks similar comprehensive understanding through different means, right? But if you've ever been to someone who's practicing Chinese medicine, very often this can go way deeper, because you also talk about the emotional aspects of things. And if you have been treated with that, it's kind of astonishing results you can get from there, right? So what are the treatment principles? The system established key principles that continue to guide traditional Chinese medicine today. First, treat the root, not just the branch. Second, balance yin and yang. Third, support the body's natural healing capacity. Fourth, consider the individual's constitution. And 5, account for environmental factors. So what is the modern synthesis of that? Today we are seeing a fascinating convergence between this ancient wisdom and modern science, right? For example, in systems biology. So modern research is confirming the interconnected nature of bodily systems that the Yellow Emperor described. And there's also scientific studies that validate the importance of natural rhythms in health. Let's look a little bit into the practical modern applications. So let's translate this a little bit into the modern life here. The daily rhythm. One important thing can be here, like very practical, wake up with or before the sun. And especially if you live in a time zone or in a space where this is very fluctuant, that can be hard. Eat the largest meal when the sun is highest. So your largest meal often would be lunch. And allow for rest and renewal in the evening, which means get some resting time. And align activity with your natural energy cycles. That's something you can even like journal, for example, and figure out like what time of the day or the weeks, or even if you do it really long term, the year, you have more energy than others. For example, for most people, summer provides you with more energy than winter, just because of the vitamin D and the sun influence, right? Seasonal attunement. Adjust your diet to seasonal foods instead of like eating everything that's always available. That might make a difference in your health. Modify activity levels with the seasons, and adapt sleep patterns to seasonal light. And then also prepare for seasonal transitions. One practice I took with me from Germany is like the moment it gets colder, in Germany we would always go to saunas or anything that's like cold, hot, hot, cold. Nowadays you have a lot of like cold plunges here in North America. That's really helpful to prepare your body for the winter, right? Then also have environmental awareness, right? So notice how weather affects your health. Again, journal can help there. Create healthy sleep environments. Have no phone. There's like other really basic things you can do to that. Maintain clean air and water. So have enough air circulation in where you're living. And minimize exposure to artificial environments. Okay. Now, let's go a little bit further. Emotional balance. You can just recognize emotion-organ connections. See like how you feel certain moments and what does it do in your body. Practice appropriate emotional expression. Maintain regular emotional hygiene. And understand your personal emotional patterns. I mean, that can be from just you trying to figure this out, or you have someone who can help you with that, like a therapist. Then preventive practices could be obviously regular, at least gentle exercise. There's many different ways of doing that. You can look for mindful breathing exercises or practices, and obviously appropriate rest combined with activity, and create conscious eating habits. So the Yellow Emperor's medicine isn't just a historical curiosity, it is really a living tradition that continues to evolve to this day. Its principles of wholeness, prevention, and natural healing offer really crucial insights for our modern healthcare challenges. As we face increasing rates of chronic disease, stress-related disorders, and environmental health issues, the Yellow Emperor's integrated approach to health becomes more relevant than ever. Right? So it reminds us that true health isn't just about treating symptoms, it's about maintaining harmony between body, mind, and environment. These insights set the foundation for not just a medical system, but also a way of living in harmony with natural laws. Okay, now let's look a little bit into the next one, which is how did he influence martial ideas? That's something I'm really interested in, so let's dive into this. Good. Let's now look a little bit into martial wisdom of the Yellow Emperor. When we think of of the Yellow Emperor, we often focus on his medical and philosophical teachings, right? But there's another crucial aspect of his legacy, and that's his profound understanding of martial arts and strategy. The ancient texts tell us how he was not just a healer and philosopher, but also a master strategist who understood the deeper principles of combat and movement. And for me as a martial artist, that's kind of interesting to listen to, right? So, what's the foundation here? According to legend, the Yellow Emperor faced a powerful adversary named Qi Yu, a battle that would shape Chinese martial arts forever. But what makes this story fascinating isn't just the combat. It's really how the emperor approached warfare as a manifestation of natural principles. In the text, or it kind of speaks about that before engaging in battle, the Yellow Emperor observed nature. And all to my Kung Fu geeks here, it's going to be very interesting. So, what did he observe? He observed the way animals move and fight, how water flows around obstacles, the patterns of wind and weather, the rhythms of day and night, and the changing of seasons. So these observations led to fundamental principles that would influence martial arts for millennia. First, natural movement, and here I quote, "The highest skill flows like water, strikes like thunder, moves like wind, and stands like a mountain," end quote. So the emperor understood that true martial skill isn't just about forcing and struggling, it's really about aligning with natural forces. This principle would later influence Tai Chi and its flowing movements, the circular patterns of Bagua or Bagua Zhang, the explosive power of Jingji, but also the adaptability of all the Shaolin arts from the temple. Now, strategy and timing. There he said, and I quote, "Victory comes not from overwhelming force, but from perfect timing," end quote. And everybody who knows fighting can see truth in that. If you're practicing something where you spar, whatever, you know the most important things are timing and distance. Obviously, being stronger than the other person is also can be helpful, but it's not guaranteeing you anything. So the emperor taught that understanding cycles and rhythms was crucial. Again, daily energy cycles, seasonal fighting patterns, the rhythm of combat, and the timing of attack and defense. Now, what else? Is the unity of mind and body. Quote, "The hand strikes where the mind leads, the body moves as one unit," end quote. So this understanding of psychophysical unity would become later on so central to Chinese martial arts. The importance of mental training, the development of internal power, the unity of technique and spirit, or Shen, the balance of hard and soft, right, yin and yang. So a lot of the things we later learned in our arts comes from that, which is like 5,000 years old. Just sit with this for a second. Now, how did the emperor select the 5 elements in combat? His understanding of the 5 elements, as mentioned, isn't just medical, right? It also has profound martial applications. And let's go through the 5 elements. Wood is the principle of flexibility and growth, right? is the ability to bend without breaking. It's the idea of having explosive spring-like power, the adaptability in technique, and the growth through practice. The more flexible you are also in your mind, the more you can adapt to a situation and move around it. Fire, expansion and transformation. Again, explosive striking power, dynamic footwork, aggressive tactics, and having the spirit of courage. That all helps you in your combat. Earth, the principle of stability and centering. That goes back into the most basic and significant stance we all know from Kung Fu, which is Mabu, or horse stance, which is right-rooted stance work, balanced movement, central equilibrium, grounded power. Metal, the principle of condensing and hardening, right? This includes like focused striking, precise cutting movements, very clear techniques and refined skills. Iron palm or iron shoot, all these hardening techniques, they can be related to the metal, right? And actually sometimes you use metal. Then last but not least, water, the principle of flowing and penetrating. Understanding fluid movements. You can see this in someone who is really good in Bagua, how they flow around. Adaptable strategy, penetrating forces, and continuous motion, right? Like a continuous non-stopping flow of attacks, for example. Now, what are the practical applications here? The martial wisdom the emperor teaches us are practical principles that can apply both in combat and in daily life, right? So, first, positional structure. And that's something a lot of times, especially in traditional Chinese martial arts, is still practiced today, which is proper position precedes all effective action. This includes understanding spatial relationships, maintaining optimal structure, and using natural leverage, but also economizing your energy, right? One practice there could be in Tai Chi with Chi Sao, but really understanding that working more on your structure first before you're going into more fluent attacking movements. Then energy management. Victory belongs to those who preserve their strength while making the opponent exhaust theirs, end quote. So that includes being efficient in your use of force, the understanding of tension and relaxation, energy conservation, and strategic expenditure. If you have sparred with beginners, they don't know that yet, and they very often get tired very fast because they have not developed this skill yet. But it's so crucial, especially when you advance more and have more exposure to fighting and all this. And then last, here's the mental discipline, right? And here, quote again, "The battle is won in the mind before it begins in the world," end quote. So there's the focus on cultivation, the development of awareness, the development of emotional control, and also of strategic thinking. I have been in tournaments, and when my mind wasn't there, I almost always lost. When I had a really strong mind that I will win this fight, I won. So there's a clear and strong correlation to that your mind can create the reality you want, right? And you can see this also with I noticed this actually interestingly very often in specific like in like professional fighting, sometimes you can see that when people go in and they're like very unsure, and most likely they will lose. So out of this, there's many things that are still really valuable. So in combat sports, you would have like energy efficiency, strategic timing, the mental preparation, and having structural integrity, right? Like with your body. In daily life, this can all go back to conflict resolution, stress management, physical wellness, and mental clarity. And if you go a little bit further and think like, okay, this could be also used for leadership roles or creating your own leadership. And there you can take out of this strategic thinking, resource management, adaptability, and having a balanced action, right? So this really shows us how true martial arts are more than just fighting, right? They're about understanding the deeper principles of movement, energy, and strategy. And these teachings from the Yellow Emperor remind us that the highest martial arts aren't always about domination, but also about the harmony with natural principles. And even today in modern martial arts, there's a continuation to discover new depth in these ancient teachings, and finding that the principles of natural movement, strategic timing, and unified action, this remains as relevant today as they were in the Emperor's time. The legacy of the Yellow Emperor isn't confined to ancient scrolls or historical accounts. His wisdom flows through time like a river, gathering new insights while maintaining its essential nature. What makes this particularly fascinating is how modern science is beginning to catch up with what this ancient sage understood thousands of years ago. The Emperor spoke of 3 treasures that humans must cultivate and protect: Qing, Qi, and Shen. Imagine these as 3 aspects of yourself that you experience every day. Qing is your fundamental essence. It's what you inherited from your parents, your basic constitution, the deep reserves of energy that fuel your life. When you talk about someone having a strong or weak constitution, we are really talking about Qing. Qi, the second treasure, is your daily energy, the vitality that allows you to move, think, and function. It's what makes the difference between a good day and a bad one, between feeling energetic and feeling drained. Think of it as the fuel that powers your daily activities. And then there's Chen, your spirit or consciousness. This is the light in someone's eyes, the clarity of their thoughts, the quality of their presence. When we say someone has strong spirits or a beautiful presence, we are really talking about their Shen. What's remarkable is how modern science is validating these ancient understandings. When the Yellow Emperor talked about daily cycles and rhythms, he was describing what we now call chronobiology. Our hormones rise and fall in daily patterns, our body temperature fluctuates in predictable cycles, our digestive system has optimal times for activity, all just as the Emperor described thousands of years ago. His understanding of environmental influences on health now finds confirmation in environmental medicine. We are discovering how air quality, seasonal changes, and climate patterns affect our well-being. Insights that we are already documented in the Neijing. But perhaps most profound is how his integrated view of human health aligns with modern systems biology. Just as the Emperor saw the body as an interconnected whole, we are now mapping the intricate connections between our gut microbiome and our brain, between our immune system and our emotions, between our physical health and our mental state. Living in harmony with these principles doesn't require us to reject modern life. Instead, it asks us to be more conscious of natural rhythms, even within our contemporary world. It's about understanding that our bodies still follow the patterns of nature, even when we are surrounded by artificial light and climate-controlled environments. In practical terms, this might mean waking with or before the sun, being most active when our natural energy is highest, and allowing ourselves to wind down as evening approaches. It means eating in tune with our body's rhythms and the seasons, moving in ways that support rather than strain our systems, and maintaining awareness of how our environment affects our health. The wisdom of the Yellow Emperor reminds us that true health isn't about following rigid rules or fighting against nature. It's about finding harmony with natural laws. In our modern world of artificial schedules and digital demands, this ancient wisdom becomes more relevant and not less. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of the Yellow Emperor's legacy is how it bridges past and present. It shows us that wisdom doesn't have an expiration date. It evolves and finds new expression in each era. Just as the Emperor sought to understand the fundamental principles of health and harmony, we continue this exploration with both ancient insights and modern tools. As we conclude our journey through the wisdom of the Yellow Emperor, I'm kind of reminded of my own experiences in traditional martial arts and in martial arts in general. You see, when I first began training Shaolin Kung Fu, which is now almost 20 years ago, I approached it like many Westerners, looking for techniques and applications, maybe also to look cool, But as I dived deeper into these ancient teachings with my sifus, I discovered what the Yellow Emperor knew all along. That true mastery isn't about accumulating techniques, but about understanding fundamental principles. In my many years of teaching at my school, I've seen how these ancient insights about cycles, energy, and natural law directly impact our training. When students align their practice with natural rhythms, their progress accelerates. When they fight against these principles, very often they struggle. It's exactly what the Yellow Emperor was teaching about harmony with natural law. And we talk now about the environmental natural law, but there's also the natural law regarding the emotional aspects of it. So these aren't just historical curiosities or philosophical concepts. They are practical principles that I see work every day in both martial arts training and daily life. Whether you're a martial artist, a busy professional, or someone simply seeking better health, the Yellow Emperor's wisdom offers a profound framework for understanding yourself and your relationship with the natural world and the people around you. Think about your own patterns and how do you move through your day. Are you fighting against natural rhythms or are you flowing with them? As a martial artist, I've learned that the greatest power comes not from forcing, but from aligning. Exactly what the Yellow Emperor taught thousands of years ago. Now, in our next episode, we will explore one of the most influential figures in martial arts history. I'm really excited about that. That's Bodhidharma, the legendary monk who brought Chan Buddhism to China and transformed the Shaolin Temple forever. As someone who's trained in Shaolin Kung Fu, I am particularly excited to share how this Indian monk's teachings created a revolution in both spiritual practices and martial arts that continues to influence us today and made me being able to teach other people an amazing art. I'm Matthias. This is Ancient Wisdom Modern Life. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of timeless teachings. Remember, as we say in traditional martial arts, the external shapes the internal, and the internal guides the external. So, true wisdom lies in understanding this dance. Now, until next time, may you find harmony in your own practice, whatever that may be.